So Charlie Cleveland, the original founder of Unknown Worlds and Subnautica, just posted his official complaint, thereby starting the lawsuit against Krafton. And boy, this one is juicy, I'll tell you that. Now, this entire document here that has been publicized is over 50 pages long here. It's a lot of text here, so I'm not gonna read this, page by page. I'm gonna skip over some parts because some parts we already know. Case in point, if you don't know anything about the Subnautica 2 situation, I recommend you watch this video right here to get up to speed, then come back and watch this. Because, this is a lot of stuff here. I'm going to go over the parts that I find most interesting, the stuff that we didn't know. But again, this is Charlie's side of the story. This is the founder's side of the story about what happened with Krafton internally. And just so you know, again, these are allegations, but Charlie and the other founders, they're making a pretty strong case with this one. And yeah, we're going to go over what I think is going to happen after this at the end of the video. But yeah, let's start off and going through the points here that I find the most interesting. So, introduction. 4 years ago, defendant Krafton Inc. purchased Unknown Worlds Entertainment, a wildly successful independent video game studio. The deal involved a $500 million upfront payment plus an earnout that could reach $250 million, depending on Unknown Worlds' performance through 2025. This case arises from Krafton's desperate efforts to avoid paying the earnout and its flagrant contractual breaches in pursuit of that goal. So right from the get-go here, we are already seeing the claim made by the founders, that is Charlie Cleveland, Max and Ted, that they're obviously, Krafton is obviously trying to skip out on paying that big bonus. From the outset, both sides understood that the earnout would largely hinge on the next release in Unknown Worlds' smash hit game franchise, Subnautica, an underwater survival game that became a global sensation, selling over redacted million copies. Key to Subnautica's remarkable success and to the ethos of Unknown World as a company was its release into early access, a model that Unknown Worlds pioneered over the last 2 decades. Early access lets players purchase the game while still in development, providing indispensable feedback as they play and allowing the company to improve the game in real time. Early access has helped Unknown Worlds build an intensely devoted fanbase that operates in symbiosis with the company. It is a relationship founded on mutual trust, openness, and respect. And as someone who played through the original Subnautica back when it was very, very early, it's the entire thing with Subnautica is only possible because of the players helping construct the game and giving feedback. They obviously, this is very true as a statement, I feel, because they have built this entire company on the whole basis of early access, because it works for Unknown Worlds and for Charlie Cleveland. Now, I'm going to skip over some parts here because essentially Charlie, or this document, goes over things that we already know, it describes the events that has happened in social circles around the internet. So I'm just going to hop on over to how it all started with the acquisition. So, point 47. By 2021, Unknown Worlds sought a partner to help the studio reach even more players worldwide. Teaming up with a company that could provide international marketing and global branding capabilities would enable Unknown Worlds to bring more new games to its growing fan community and do so more quickly. Unknown Worlds had a great offer for any investor or buyer. Behind closed doors, Cleveland and his team had a new game in production, that being Moonbreaker, and team members who had worked on Below Zero were set to lead the charge on the next game in the Subnautica franchise. In October 2021, Krafton Inc., a South Korean video game publisher and holding company, announced that it would acquire Unknown Worlds. Pursuant to the EPA, Unknown Worlds would remain an independent studio, thereby maintaining its autonomy to develop and launch great games. Krafton recognized Unknown Worlds' proven ability to create immersive experiences that resonate with gamers around the world, and it represented publicly and privately that it would not change the soul of the studio. In a press release, Krafton wrote, "Unknown World structure and leadership will remain in place to retain its unique creative identity." Already here we're seeing that Krafton essentially promised they would not fiddle around with Unknown Worlds. They would keep everything as is. They would let Charlie and the rest of the team be. He would be able to lead the studio as he saw fit. Krafton CEO Changhan C.H. Kim told Cleveland and Gill that he was particularly excited that Unknown Worlds would bring its expertise in early access launches to Krafton. Kim also commended Unknown Worlds and promised great support. Unknown Worlds are incredibly skilled and passionate developers with an unparalleled gift for creativity and a proven track record of building successful player-driven worlds. Krafton will spare no effort in helping them. Not only do they enhance our development capabilities, but we share a goal of creating unique experiences for global audiences. In creating these unique experiences, Kim wanted Cleveland to develop Subnautica's franchise IP with cross-media expansion beyond the game into television or movies. In addition to Moonbreaker, the franchise IP effort would become Cleveland's focus. So Cleveland, Charlie that is, was supposed to expand Subnautica into more stuff, like franchises across media. Like, this was supposed to be a bigger thing, and who knows, maybe it still can be. So it's supposed to be like television, movies, stuff like that. So that was supposedly the agreement between him and Kim, the CEO of Krafton, it would seem. Krafton's promises are memorialized in the Equity Purchase Agreement, the EPA that is. Plaintiff Fortis Advisors was the shareholder representative for Unknown Worlds' former owners. In addition to the $500 million upfront purchase price, a key component of the EPA is the Earnout provision, under which the sellers, the founders, and other Unknown Worlds employees alike were eligible for an Earnout bonus of up to $250 million based on Unknown Worlds revenue through December 31, 2025, with the option to extend the earnout period through June 2026. Then we see a bunch of redacted stuff here. The earnout formula considers the something EPA. The earnout amount is calculated by with a cap of $250 million EPA. The founders owned approximately this many of the shares of Unknown Worlds at the acquisition, but in recognition of their team members' great work, the EPA is structured to provide an outsized earnout to Unknown Worlds employees. It set aside fully 10% of the earnout amount to be distributed across the team. So the $25 million would go to everybody else on the team. Beyond this guarantee, the founders plan to share even more of the earnout with their dedicated team. So Charlie and the rest, they were supposed to split even more money from the payout to the rest of the team again, which sounds really generous in my opinion. To support the team's opportunity to gain the earnout, the founders wanted to be sure they retained control of their revenue streams that could not be terminated arbitrarily. So they wanted to make sure, obviously, that this was going to happen, that they were going to get their earnout and the rest of the team would get a bonus. In the EPA, Krafton agreed that the founders would maintain operational control of the group companies in all material aspects, including for both existing and new products, product roadmap, launch, planning, partnering, budgeting, and employee matters, so long as at least one of the three of them was still employed. The EPA was consistent with the founders' employment agreements, which similarly reflects that they would, a bunch of redacted stuff, Cleveland, McGuire, and Krafton also promised that, notwithstanding anything to the contrary in the agreement, it could not terminate any employee of Unknown Worlds during the earnout window, including the founders, without the prior written consent of a majority of the founders. So essentially, 2 of the 3 founders would have to agree to terminate one of the other founders, or that they would be, taking a step back from production. That was essentially the agreement, that Krafton can't just fire them, because that was the contractual, agreement, that they can't just do this. They have to have a majority in voting from the founders, which were 3 of them, right? So this is already like a major chink in Krafton's armor. The sole exception to that prohibition allows Krafton to terminate employees for cause, a high bar requiring commission of a felony, an intentional act of fraud or dishonesty, intentional wrongful disclosure of trade secrets, or a willful act or omission by such individual that constitutes gross misconduct and that is injurious to Unknown Worlds, where willful means committed without good faith and without the reasonable belief that the act or omission was in Unknown Worlds' best interest. That sounds kind of what Krafton has been trying to spin it as, that this is for the well-being of Unknown Worlds, because Charlie and the others, they haven't committed a crime, they haven't had like intentional acts of fraud or dishonesty, disclosure of trade secrets, nothing like that. All it's essentially what Krafton has been trying to spin it at is Charlie and Max and Ted have been like gross negligent of the production of Subnautica 2. Anyway, Krafton further agreed not to take any actions, the primary business purpose of which is to deprive sellers earnout payments and to consult in good faith with the management of Unknown Worlds, prior to taking any action that would reasonably be expected to materially decrease the earnout amount. We're gonna get to this in a moment, because this one Again, like this is huge, largely because of Krafton's promises to leave creative and commercial control over Unknown Worlds in their hands. The founders were excited to work with Krafton. "We're truly looking forward to our future together," Cleveland said in a press release. Under Krafton's umbrella, Unknown Worlds continued the great work it had been doing when it was fully independent. As before the acquisition, Cleveland was largely focused on running the Moonbreaker team, while others at Unknown Worlds worked on new game concepts and continued working toward Subnautica 2. Cleveland also got to work on the Subnautica film Krafton's CEO had encouraged him to pursue. So already Charlie was starting to work on the Subnautica film that we're supposed to be getting. And again, key point here, as apparently Krafton's CEO pushed Charlie to pursue that film. Very important information. Unknown Worlds' first release post-acquisition was Moonbreaker, a turn-based strategy video game set in an expansive science fiction universe. Unknown Worlds worked on Moonbreaker for 5 years before the early access release in September 2022, holding the game for internal development and improvement far past the point it had released earlier games. Although the company achieved financial success in this time period, largely due to the continued strength of the Subnautica franchise, Moonbreaker did not sell as well as the team hoped. For Unknown Worlds, the lesson was crystal clear. Early access releases are core to its DNA, and community feedback during game development is essential for its development to build games that fans love. And again, yes, Moonbreaker, obviously it was not released in early access as far as I know, so there we go. Like another key point, Unknown Worlds should essentially release games in early access because they need player feedback to build their games to make really great games. Follow extensive communications with Krafton about how developed Subnautica 2 needed to be for early access. Unknown Worlds pushed the planned early access release date back to the fourth quarter of 2024 and then to the first half of 2025. The fan community's excitement for the game increased when in November of 2023, Krafton revealed in a financial report that the Subnautica sequel would be released on that timeline. With additional review of the game within Unknown Worlds and additional feedback from and conversations with Krafton, Unknown Worlds pushed the release date one last time to, now we don't know what month this is, but in 2025. Unknown Worlds saw this as a sweet spot for the release timing, late enough to allow its developers to get the game ready and early enough for the fan community to join the effort and help the developers iterate. Krafton agreed. Conversations with Krafton also led the founders to clarify their responsibilities in 2024 by changing their titles within Unknown Worlds. And this is all the talk surrounding like how Charlie took up another title, and we've heard this talk publicly on the internet here, and it seems like they're trying to clarify what was going on here. As the company was growing rapidly and working on several major projects at a time, it was natural for the founders to take on a more supervisory role across the company, as opposed to remaining pigeonholed on a specific game or project, because Krafton wanted them to go back to specific roles instead of like having like an umbrella view of the entire company and what they should do. The founders discussed the plan with Krafton executives, who later confirmed to Gill that Krafton's CEO fully supported the plan. So, Cleveland's title changed from CEO and design director to franchise creative director, removing administrative tasks Krafton required of a CEO and allowing him to focus on Subnautica's cross-media expansion and, in particular, on the Subnautica film. Cleveland moved to Los Angeles to network with Hollywood creatives in support of the film. Now, this is very interesting because the whole conversation around a film has been about Charlie's like an upcoming Christmas film that Charlie has been working on, but it sounds to me here like it was actually supposed to be like a Subnautica film that he was working on. So I wonder what the situation is really there. Like, what is the full picture? We're going to get to that at some point, not here, but this is very interesting. McGuire's title changed from technical director to special projects director so that he, Unknown World's most talented engineer, could focus on research and development within the studio rather than on managing people. Sounds like it makes sense. Finally, Gill's title changed from president to CEO, a role that allowed him to free Cleveland from Krafton-mandated administrative tasks and was consistent with the leadership role he had taken on in his years since joining the company. Multiple Krafton executives congratulated Gill on assuming his new role. Krafton updated the founders' roles in Workday, its HR system, by August 12, 2024, and on official organizational charts thereafter. Krafton also updated Cleveland's title on its public-facing website, where it highlighted certain employees. And here we see, you know, some of the key people on Krafton, and on the right side here we see Charlie Cleveland, the CEO of Unknown Worlds, and yeah, it seems like they were very happy with them. apparently. Given its centrality to the company's success, the founders, of course, maintained an active role for Subnautica 2, driving its overall creative and commercial direction and supervising the day-to-day leads. But the role clarifications allowed them to widen their scope and push for the kind of broad franchise IP success that Krafton wanted. So again, it seems, according to Charlie and the others, like this was what Krafton had asked of them to, like, try to cross-pollinate to other media with Subnautica as a franchise. With the role clarifications complete, Unknown Worlds pushed ahead and unveiled the next steps for Subnautica's franchise. It released the Subnautica 2 teaser trailer in October of 2024 on YouTube, where it has hundreds of thousands of subscribers. The fan community expressed great enthusiasm in the comments. And we see a bunch of, very excited people here after this. Of course, like, it was a big day for all the Subnautica fans. But now we get to the point where things start going downhill. Now, this is the one that really matters in all of this. As momentum for Subnautica 2 was building, the reality of what this would mean for Earnout hit Krafton. When that happened, everything changed. In early 2025, given the upcoming release of Subnautica 2, Gill was negotiating incentive bonuses for the many employees who were not guaranteed to receive Earnout pay because they joined Unknown Worlds after Krafton's acquisition. Sounds like a really good move, a good guy move there, right? In the course of those conversations, Gill provided Krafton executives a set of realistic financial projections incorporating Subnautica 2's release. Under one projection, the founders and other Unknown Worlds employees would earn something something, and under the other they would make something something. That is, the bonus that was set aside plus additional bonuses from the founders themselves, apparently, it would seem. In subsequent conversations, Gill confirmed that these revenue projections were conservative and that the actual revenue would likely be higher. Not only were the scenarios missing significant revenue streams, specifically mobile and Nintendo 2 Switch sales, they also likely underestimated continued sales of Subnautica and Subnautica Below Zero. Those games would have had a bump in sales when Subnautica 2 launched. Absolutely. Perhaps more importantly, the projections considered only what the earnout would be if the window ended in 2025, but the EPA permits the window to be extended through June 2026. With nearly a full year of Subnautica 2 revenue included, it is highly likely that the founders and other Unknown Worlds employees would make something something. That was the turning point in Unknown Worlds' relationship with Krafton. After Krafton leaders reviewed Gill's projections and evaluated the anticipated revenue and earnout numbers, everything changed. During the first week of April 2025, Unknown Worlds publishing colleagues in Krafton's El Segundo, California office traveled to Korea to finalize the marketing and advertising strategy for Subnautica 2's something launch. Upon their return, the El Segundo team, Krafton employees, reported to Gill that Krafton's leadership was not focused on a successful launch, but instead on how it could convince Unknown Worlds to delay the game. Already, this is where it started. They went to, finalize all of the marketing and stuff with Krafton, and they came back and they were like, yeah, so the leaders up there, they want to delay the game. If everything before that wasn't a red, this is a massive red flag. The El Segundo colleagues informed Gill that Krafton's legal team was combing through the agreements looking for any opening to terminate the founders if they proceeded with the planned monthly release. The El Segundo colleagues told Gill that it was clear that Krafton was aiming to avoid paying the earnout. Good of the El Segundo teams to actually let Charlie know about this. Again, this is his claim, but this is a very strong story so far, so I don't actually doubt this. The founders were shocked. Krafton had promised in the EPA that it would not take any actions with the primary business to the purpose of depriving sellers of the earnout payments, and now it appeared that Krafton was taking steps to delay the launch and even fire the founders for that very purpose. So this was not as sudden as we thought it was. This has been going on for a while, like a couple of months at least. The clash between the game's prospects and Krafton's delay goals crystallized after Gill met with Krafton's chief global publishing officer, Jin Oh. During an April 8th meeting, it appeared Oh had not received the message from Krafton headquarters that Subnautica 2 needed to be delayed. Oh told Gill that the founders were being too conservative in their sales figures for Subnautica 2 and that they needed to aim bigger. Oh wanted to put together a business and marketing plan to sell 2 to 3 million copies by December 31, 2025, something redacted. This would have left the sellers poised to easily make their full $250 million payout. Oh pointed that Krafton's recent early access launch of another game, Inzoi, which sold 1.1 million copies in the first week despite having significantly less content and being less developed than Subnautica 2, O thought Unknown Worlds should easily double that sales figure with proper publishing support. Yeah, it's gonna sell like hotcakes, I'm gonna tell you, obviously. But days later, the founders received confirmation that Krafton's support had gone cold. On April 11, 2025, Krafton's head of publishing for the Americas reported to Gill that Krafton was looking to delay the game but did not seem to have a valid reason for doing so. From mid-April forward, Krafton began building a news story that Subnautica 2 was not ready and could not be released in this month of 2025. Again, the leak that has been going on from Krafton seems to paint the picture that a lot of stuff were cut and that they had reason to delay it. This story, well, it makes it pretty certain that Krafton is working overtime to really control the narrative here, but from Charlie's point of view, this entire story so far, it just, it just blows Krafton's side out of the water. Now, we get to this point. Krafton embraces obstructionist tactics to delay Subnautica 2 and avoid paying the earnout. At this point, Krafton began a months-long campaign designed to delay Subnautica 2's launch and avoid the earnout. In late April, Krafton's chief publishing global officer declared that Krafton wanted to assign a new publishing team to Subnautica 2 despite Unknown Worlds' great relationship with Krafton's El Segundo publishing unit. So they seem to be on good terms with El Segundo. They are the ones that warned Charlie and the others of the situation. Unknown Worlds' only requests were for Krafton to assign someone who had experience in shipping early access titles, could work with Unknown Worlds' mostly American and European time zones, and spoke English at least conversationally. Krafton met none of those requests. It assigned a VP of publishing who had extremely limited experience in releasing a PC game, had just worked on his first early access title, was based in Korea and thus in a different time zone than needed, and did not speak English. In meetings throughout May, Krafton's publishing team advanced the new company line. Subnautica 2 was not ready. They tried to seize control over the launch, asserting that contrary to the clear terms of the EPA, the release date would be Krafton's call. They delayed decisions and delivered incomplete work product. On May 20th of 2025, Cleveland joined Kim, Krafton CEO, and some colleagues for lunch. Kim said that if Unknown Worlds released the game on its planned timeline, meaning Krafton would have to pay the earnout, it could be disastrous financially and hugely embarrassing for Krafton. Why would it be embarrassing for Krafton? If Kim actually said this, what? Them paying out a $250 million earnout to Unknown Worlds would be respectable. People would be like, oh my god, these are the greatest publishers ever. So it's like, okay, if this holds true, what? Anyway, Krafton later asserted that Kim never made those statements. Instead, Krafton claimed Kim's words had been, incorrectly interpreted by the translators, an issue that had not arisen in other translated meetings over almost 4 years. Yeah, it's like, incorrectly interpreted. Really? That's a big thing to incorrectly translate to somebody. That is a huge mistake if that is true. A week later, O, Chief Global Publishing Officer, told Gill that if Unknown Worlds was going to release Subnautica 2 with Krafton, it had to be done his way or not at all. O was offended when Gill reminded him that the EPA preserved the release date decision for Unknown Worlds alone. It seems like Krafton is just completely just sidelining the entire planning and the contract that they had written. It's like, what are they doing? Shortly thereafter, Krafton demanded that Unknown Worlds delay the game until 2026, again claiming that Subnautica 2 was not ready. Krafton's obstructionist tactics intensified at May 27, 2025 milestone review meetings, a Krafton-mandated gatekeeping process for checking on games and developments. I wonder if that is the documents that they had leaked the other day. That seems to be the case here. I'm just guessing. At the meeting, Krafton announced that the game had to be delayed based on the reviews of its internal experts. The founders would later learn that the purported experts had little expertise to share. None had worked on successful early access games, and none had experience with games in Subnautica 2's genre, survival. For their part, the founders explained at the milestone review meeting why Krafton's view was wrong and why the planned 2025 release should proceed. They explained that playtest data, feedback from hundreds of community members who played the game for thousands of hours, man, I am jelly of you guys, unequivocally confirmed that the game was ready to go, and they expressed concern that taking longer to develop the game internally would risk losing the many benefits of open development, the most important factor in Unknown Worlds' successful track record. Again, it's their entire strategy to release games in early access and let the players help them build the game. It seems like Krafton doesn't understand that for some reason, but why did they buy them then? A few days later, in a meeting with Kim, Gill reaffirmed a bunch of retracted stuff here. Then we get to the point here. Krafton takes its delayed tactics to another level, pulling all support for the month launch for the express purpose of frustrating the Earnout. In the face of Unknown Worlds' resolve, Krafton amplified its obstructionist agenda. It sent letters to the founders making a variety of unfounded claims about the game's readiness and the founders' activities, issued an internal stop working order, and pulled all of its resources from Subnautica 2. This orchestrated effort aimed to delay the game and thereby harm the Earnout. So this seems to be about the fact that Charlie was working on another film or something about a Christmas film, and that the others were working on other stuff on the side. And apparently this was all unfounded, but they started sending it to the founders from the start before we actually got to see it public. Krafton pulled the many corporate resources it had long committed to providing Unknown Worlds in support of the launch. For example, Krafton's marketing team had been set to support the game's release with over something in asset creation, that being trailers, influencer kits, and audio series, and something cover of PC Gamer. Krafton simply stopped responding to and paying the vendors, leaving Gill scrambling to inform anyone that he could that something. Okay, so they just stopped paying vendors. What? Krafton's localization team had been set to translate the game into 9 languages needed for Unknown Worlds' global audience. No longer. Krafton's analytics team had been set to provide back-end services including analytics and server infrastructure. No longer. Krafton's policies team had been set to devise key policies such as terms of use and privacy. No longer. Krafton's legal team had been set to provide contract review services in advance of the launch. No longer. Indeed, one of Krafton's El Segundo publishing employees reported to Gill that Krafton headquarters told all Krafton teams to stop all creative tasks related to Subnautica 2. That is fucking insane. Really? The employee supervisor even demanded that he and his team cease communication with Unknown Worlds altogether. This just sounds extremely desperate on Krafton's part. Like, are they literally seriously just stopping everything? It's like, no real notice, nothing. I mean, you could see it as some form of notice given when they, alleged a bunch of stuff to the founders previously, but it's like, what? You just stop? Krafton's tactics were so egregious as to impair Unknown Worlds' relationships with key industry partners. Perhaps most notably, the company lost several highly valuable promotional opportunities with something when Krafton neglected to respond to someone's emails. Multiple Krafton employees suggested to Gill that the purpose of these actions was to diminish the Earnout, and Krafton's head of global strategy and operations told Gill that pulling these resources was a permissible way for Krafton to avoid supporting the Earnout. So they're trying to be strategic about this whole thing that, they can't just break the contract, but they're pulling all the resources. If this were not enough, Krafton then took aim at harming Unknown Worlds' relationship with its fan community, and we all know what happened there. It seized control of unknownworlds.com and subnautica.com and posted, without consulting the founders or obtaining their approval, a statement apologizing for Subnautica taking far longer than any of us ever intended, and making allegations about Cleveland and McGuire's alleged roles. And of course, we get a picture here in the document about, the announcement that Krafton made that started pulling the leaders in the mud or dragging them through the mud. The message threatened to cast a cloud of uncertainty over the game within the market and the user base. Posting this message without the knowledge or consent of anyone at Unknown Worlds violated multiple provisions of the EPA, including the founders' right to complete operational control over Unknown Worlds. Krafton was forced to take the message down and return control of the 2 websites. Around the same time, Krafton escalated its intimidation campaign against the founders. In a June 10 letter to the founders, Krafton CEO made unfounded claims about Cleveland and McGuire's involvement with Unknown Worlds, and it falsely accused the founders of failing to fulfill their contractual responsibilities and violating their fiduciary duties. On June 18th, Krafton's head of global strategy and operations met with Gill and made Krafton's first attempt to get the founders to accept a lower earnout. So they were trying to get them to, okay, we can maybe pay half or something. We don't know the amount, but we can't pay this this much. Krafton's lowball pressure tactics would not have left the sellers anything close to what they deserved, and they did not allow them to share the earnout with the full team, so the founders declined. So they weren't actually allowed to share the full earnout, it seems, with the rest of the people working on the game, the rest of the devs. Oh, whoa, okay. By June 19th, Krafton again increased its effort to pressure the founders not to release the game. Krafton sent another letter taking issue with Unknown Worlds exercising its contractual right to control the launch date. The letter again made baseless allegations that the founders were violating contracts and breaching their fiduciary duties. And it threatened that to prevent the release of Subnautica 2, Krafton would take over operational control of Unknown Worlds despite the EPA's direct command to the contrary. Krafton returned to the negotiating table on June 26, 2025, this time offering the amount that Krafton's models showed the earnout would be without the marketing and publishing support Krafton had pulled. Krafton acknowledged in this meeting that sales would be more successful and the earnout higher had Krafton provided the agreed upon marketing and publishing support for Subnautica 2. The founders again declined the offer because they wanted to get the full amount that they were promised. The founders' last interactions with Krafton leadership were in late June. On June 25, 2025, Krafton's head of corporate development told Gill that Krafton's plan was to remove the Unknown Worlds board and fire the founders. She warned Gill that the lawyers are ready to go. That is ominous as hell. 2 days later, on a call with Krafton's global head of strategy and operations, Gill made additional efforts to negotiate with hopes of reaching a mutually agreeable outcome and gaining Krafton's support. Among other things, Gill suggested that the founders would personally take less so that a larger portion of the earnout could go to Unknown Worlds' dedicated team. That's really sweet. Like, if this is true, that is awesome. In response, Gill was told that this will be our last call. Nonetheless, even in the face of Krafton's extreme sandbagging and pressure tactics, Subnautica 2 remained set for its 2025 release. Krafton's campaign had needlessly harmed the game, but it had not prevented the launch. Krafton was out of options. Now, with the launch date looming and its delay tactics having failed, Krafton took the nuclear option. It fired all 3 founders and delayed the game's launch until 2026. Here we go. On July 1, 2025, Krafton emailed each of the founders with the letters informing each that they were terminated effectively immediately. Before terminating the founders, Krafton also removed them from Unknown Worlds' board of directors without their knowledge. Indeed, Krafton did not consult with the founders before either their termination or their board removal, contrary to Krafton's express promise to consult in good faith before taking any action that would be reasonably be expected to materially decrease the earnout amount. It's like they forgot the promise or the contracts. In the termination letters, Steve Paputzis, acting on behalf of Krafton, explained that each was fired because of their intention to proceed with a premature release of Subnautica 2. Through reference to subsections of the founders' employment agreements, the letters make clear that the founders were terminated without cause, despite the express terms of the EPA permitting only a for-cause termination. Again, like this thing, it seems to suggest that there was really no good cause for this because they weren't, told that there was a good reason for this, only that, yeah, we're going to delay the game, but you gave full rights to Unknown Worlds that they would decide when the release date actually was supposed to be. Specifically, the termination letters provide that Krafton's payment of the amounts of benefits set forth in Section 7B of the employment agreements is conditioned upon the founder's release of claims. In turn, Section 7B of the employment agreements describes post-termination payments and benefits for as such relevant here when employment is terminated by the company without cause. Had Krafton terminated the founders for cause, the proper subsection to reference would have been section C7 something something something. This without cause termination violates the express terms of the EPA, which allow Krafton to fire the founders only for cause. Nor would Krafton have had cause to terminate the founders. The EPA specifically limits for cause termination to situations involving the commission of a felony, an intentional act of fraud and dishonesty, intentional wrongful disclosure of trade secrets or confidential information, or a willful act or omission that constitutes gross misconduct, and that is injurious to Unknown Worlds, where willful means committed without good faith and without a reasonable belief that the act of or omission was in Unknown Worlds' best interests. The founders have not individually or collectively done anything that could even plausibly fall within the strict definition of cause. In concert with its termination of the founders, Krafton publicly announced that Paputzis had been appointed CEO of Unknown Worlds, replacing the founders effectively immediately. Krafton brought Paputzis over from a different video game company, he has zero prior experience with Unknown Worlds, let alone Subnautica 2, the game whose launch Krafton deemed the founders unfit to oversee. Again, really good point here. In his public statement, Krafton indicated that the early access release of Subnautica 2 would be delayed, explaining that its internal processes focus on delivering the right game at the right time, and that it was doing everything possible to ensure the final result of the game would be worth the wait. Unknown Worlds employees who remained with the company subsequently confirmed to Gill that Krafton had pulled the release of Subnautica 2 and intended to launch it sometime in 2026 instead. And as of July 9th, Krafton has publicly confirmed the 2026 release timeline. In short, Krafton flagrantly breached both the letter and the spirit of the promises at the very core of its agreement to purchase Unknown Worlds. It promised to leave creative and operational control in the hands of the founders. Promise broken. It promised to consult with the founders before taking any action that could harm the Earnout. Promise broken. It promised not to take any action with the primary business purpose of frustrating the Earnout. Promise broken. And it promised not to terminate the founders without cause. Promise broken. And why? Because Krafton knew that allowing the founders to launch Subnautica 2 as planned would generate enormous commercial success and require Krafton to pay the $250 million earnout. By firing the founders and delaying the launch, Krafton can capture what's left of the game's commercial success without paying the Unknown Worlds team a penny of the earnout. In the name of its bottom line, Krafton has thrown his promises out the window and ripped the game from the hands of both its creators and the community. And now we arrive at the damages section of this entire thing, and well, this is a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo, so let me just put it in plain words what Charlie is saying here, and this is paraphrasing, so again, this is not what the actual document says, but what to me this seems like is, fuck you, give us our money, pay for the damages caused to the company's name, that is Unknown Worlds, make sure that we are reinstated as our leadership positions. Also, you're gonna pay the bill for this entire lawsuit. That is on you, Krafton. We are gonna go back to where we were before when everything was good, and you're gonna pay the damages done. You're going to pay the full amount that you agreed to. You're going to pay for the headache, and you're going to pay for the illegal fees. And I gotta say, this is really ballsy. Like, it's apparent when you read through this, like the founders, especially Charlie, seems pretty pissed about the situation. Now, again, that was just paraphrasing. I'm just trying to be a little bit funny here. But yeah, this is a really strong case. I've read through the entire document a couple of times now. And yeah, I mean, if, when this goes to court, because obviously it will go to court, we can expect to see probably a lot of this turn out to be true. I think he presents a really strong case here. And we gotta mention one thing here that is very important. This is not gonna be decided with a jury. This is the Delaware court. This is gonna be decided by a judge, and the Delaware court is like the place where you decide matters that are big in terms of corporations. So let's just say that this is quite literally a corporate deathmatch. This is trial by combat, essentially. And so what Krafton is probably they could either go and try to dismiss this case. That is the most likely option that they're going to go for. They're probably going to try to prove that, yeah, we had reasons to fire the founders. But in all honesty, I feel like they're probably going to try to settle this in some way. I would personally say that they should probably retract this and try to be on good terms with Charlie and the founders and just take them back. Reverse the entire decision to fire them, do as Charlie says here, because what it seems like here is that if they try to dismiss this and if they fail, Krafton is gonna go down as one of the greediest publishers ever. They are gonna ruin their name forever. And chances are high, after reading through this entire complaint, that they're gonna fail. Again, this is not evidence, this is a claim. These are all things from Charlie's point of view. If they continue with this and all of this can be proven in court, I'm just going to say it, Krafton will probably fail because he presents a lot of stuff here, he claims a lot of stuff here, and he probably wouldn't do that unless he had reasonable cause. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below here. I hope you guys didn't get too bored out with me reading this entire thing. Thank you for watching and have a nice day. Mr. Dalton signing off.